My name is Chloe Rowe, 36 years old. I was standing at Gate B14 at San Francisco International when the airline agent informed me that my business class ticket had been canceled. My mother turned to me with a cold smile and said loudly, "Have fun walking home, you pathetic loser. Don't ruin your cousin's wedding." My father added with contempt, "Take the bus. Know your fucking place. You're nothing but a burden." My Aunt Marion laughed while holding my mother's arm. The rest of my family was checking in their 8 business class tickets, the ones I had booked and paid for through my corporate account. Laughing and taking photos like I was already forgotten. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply took out my phone, made one call, and said quietly, "Revoke all corporate comps for the entire group, immediately." 10 minutes later, the airline agent returned, looking nervous, and announced to my entire family, "There's been a major change. All your business class upgrades have been canceled." Their faces turned pale. They still had no idea who truly controlled everything. Drop a comment if you've ever been treated like trash by the people you quietly carried. Subscribe for the full story. The Sunday morning I lost my seat at Gate B14 started with a rule I had kept for 8 years. No news, no calls, no notifications before 6 a.m. on an international travel day. I drank 1 cup of black coffee at the window in my apartment on Russian Hill, watched the fog move across the marina, and let the day arrive in its own time. That rule died at 6:02 when my Aunt Marion sent me a text that opened with the word "sweetheart." I had a wedding to attend that Friday. My cousin Ashley was marrying a Ricci, Marco Ricci, of Tenuta Ricci Sangiovese, 6 generations of vineyard just outside Montalcino. The estate had been my top 3 distribution partner at Cascadia Beverage Group since 2018, when I first flew to Tuscany as a junior associate, and Signora Cristina Ricci decided I was the person she wanted her wine to travel with in the United States. I sell wine for a living, or, more accurately, I introduce old land to new tables. Some of those tables belong to Michelin restaurants along the West Coast. Some of them belong to families who wouldn't know a Sangiovese from a Cabernet. And some of them, I would come to understand that Sunday don't deserve the introduction at all. At 6 a.m., I put a Ricci Sangiovese 2015 Reserva into my cabin bag, wrapped in a gray silk scarf. Signora Cristina had gifted it to me my 2nd year with the estate, when the harvest had been dry and the wine had come out sharper than she wanted, and she poured me a glass and asked me what I thought. I told her it tasted like a woman who had been asked to smile in the wrong weather. She laughed. She hasn't stopped sending me the special bottles since. That one, I was planning to open at the welcome dinner on Friday. I put on a Navy Theory blazer and tied my hair low. I read Marion's text once and did not answer. "Sweet Chloe, are you already at the gate? Long flight ahead. Don't forget to eat something." Marion doesn't ask questions like a normal aunt. She asks them like a woman confirming a location on a map she has already drawn. I got to SFO by 6:30. My name badge from the corporate travel account was already tucked into my blazer pocket where it lives. Cascadia Beverage Group, Rowe, Chloe M., distribution partner of record, Tenuta Ricci Sangiovese. It is not a title I show off. It is a title that shows up on invoices, contracts, comp requests, and the manifest of every flight I book for anyone in my life, including the 8 business class tickets my family was about to check in that morning, including the 12 rooms at Villa Ricci for wedding week, including the ground transportation, the welcome dinner, and every bottle of wine that would be poured at Ashley's reception. None of them knew. That was the arrangement I had chosen. Ashley had called me in tears the previous December after her mother told her the wedding budget was $5,000 and her father, Marion's ex-husband George Preston up in Reno, had stopped returning calls. Ashley didn't want to ask Marco for more. She didn't want to admit her family couldn't afford the estate his family had grown up on. So she asked me, Or, more precisely, she cried into the phone at 9 in the evening and said she couldn't do it. And I said the only thing that came naturally to me. Let me handle it. Just show up beautiful. I know the estate. I know the family. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell Marion. I didn't tell anyone. I told Signora Cristina, and she said in the calm voice she uses for both wine and weather, "So we will make a wedding, my daughter. But you will be my guest of honor. That is my condition." I agreed. I did not think, on that Sunday morning in April, that I would need to remember our agreement. I did. At 6:38, my family arrived at the terminal. I saw them before they saw me, my mother in her camel coat, my father in the same navy sport jacket he had worn to my college graduation, and Marion between them, laughing at something no one had said out loud. Ashley wasn't with them. She was flying separately from Napa, a later connection. Two of my parents' friends from Roseville were pulling wheeled suitcases and looking around like they didn't quite believe they were about to fly business class to Rome. My mother had told them, at church last month, that the trip was her doing. I moved my coffee to my left hand and looked out the window. I had already been the extra chair at the family table for a long time. Christmas 2019 was the first time I really counted the seats. I was 30. I had been promoted at Cascadia 6 months earlier. Associate director, my first real seat at a room with a door. And I had chosen not to make a fuss about it because my mother had said, at Thanksgiving, that Ashley's applications to graduate school were the family news. I paid for Christmas dinner that year. Catering from a restaurant where I placed my accounts. $1,850 on my card, delivered to the house in Roseville that I had helped my parents buy with $185,000 of down payment cash. I handed my mother an envelope in the kitchen. $8,500 to cover 2 months of mortgage while my father waited for a bonus that wouldn't arrive. She opened it, put it in a drawer, and did not say thank you. At the gift exchange that evening, Ashley opened a box the size of a small television. My mother and Marion had gone in together on a Louis Vuitton Neverfull GM. Brown and orange wrapping, tissue paper coming out like sea foam. The receipt Ashley later texted me by accident said $1,800. Ashley made a sound I hadn't heard her make before. Half laugh, half disbelief, half embarrassment. Then my mother handed me a small tissue-wrapped shape. Inside was a MAC Ruby Woo lipstick. $12. My mother, without looking up, said, "Sweetheart, we know you have everything already. This is just a little something." Marion, from her armchair, added, "Ashley's still building her collection, you know how it is." Ashley looked at me the way you look at someone whose seat has just been removed from a room, and she didn't know how to give it back. I never asked for the seat. Mother's Day, 2021, was the year I stopped asking. I had booked Auberge du Soleil, 4 seats, from March. My mother, Marion, my grandmother Ruth, if she'd been alive to come. She wasn't. We had lost her in November of 2018. And me. That was the version I had built in my head. My mother called me at 9 that Sunday morning to tell me that she and Marion were already in Napa. Marion had suggested a spontaneous overnight, my mother said, in the voice she uses when the word spontaneous is doing more work than it should. They were doing a tasting at Domaine Carneros. I could meet them if I insisted. The tasting room was full. I sat in my car in front of my apartment for 40 minutes. Then I drove to Auberge, took the reservation for 4, told the hostess that the other 3 had been unavoidably detained, and let the server pour for 1 person. I ate the whole tasting menu. I drank the wine to the last swallow. I did not text my mother that night. My grandmother Ruth had a way of watching family gatherings from her armchair without saying much. The last time I saw her, at my parents' house in the summer of 2018, 3 months before she died, she took my wrist when I was clearing her plate, and she said, very quietly, "Chloe, watch which sister smiles when you're excluded." I asked her what she meant. She said, "You'll know when you need to." I thought she meant Marion in some vague way. I did not think she meant Marion in every way. October 2023, my 34th birthday. I worked until 9:30 at my office in Soma. I ate a container of Pad CU at my desk. At 10:15, my mother sent me a text. "Oh no, Chloe honey, was that today?" Ashley's engagement party was in Sonoma and time flew. Marion said Ashley wanted us there. Happy belated. I did not reply. I opened my laptop and transferred $12,000 to my mother's checking to cover the third quarter estimated tax she had asked me to handle in July. I paid my mother's taxes on my birthday. That was the year I stopped hoping. The next morning, I opened Instagram before I meant to. There was a photograph of my mother, Marion, and Ashley in Sonoma, arms around each other's shoulders. My mother had her head thrown back, laughing. Marion was closer to her than she needed to be, one hand on my mother's arm. The same posture she uses when she wants to be seen as the one everyone else circles around. Nobody had posted anything for me. Nobody had messaged. 62 comments under Ashley's story, and not one of them was my mother wondering, in public, where her daughter was. I remembered my grandmother then. I remembered her wrist on mine. At gate B14, watching Marion's hand on my mother's arm through the terminal glass, I remembered again. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started writing. I wasn't planning to send it to anyone. I have never sent this list to anyone. I was making sure I could still read the numbers without my hand shaking. 8,500 Christmas 2019 envelope. 185,000 Roseville down payment. 22,800 my father's 2022 Toyota Camry, purchased through my card because his credit score had a hitch neither of them wanted to discuss. 12,000 October 2023 estimated tax. 38,600. 7 years of utilities and health insurance supplements that I had absorbed quietly because my mother had once said, in a way that wasn't quite a request, that they were living on a fixed income. $246,400 since I started at Cascadia. Not counting the wine, not counting the interest I would have earned on my savings if I hadn't been the quiet checking account for 2 adults who told me, without saying it, that my job was to keep them from falling. I had never expected thanks. I had expected a chair. In wine, we have a word for what happens when a cork ruins what's inside. Corked. The bottle looks perfect from the outside, sealed, labeled, still worth the price on the shelf. You don't know until you open it. Sometimes families do the same to their children. Quietly, expensively, without ever offering an apology. I had been corked for a decade and told the wine tasted fine. My phone rang. It wasn't Marion. It was my Uncle Roland from Portland. Roland Kendrick is my mother's younger brother. He retired from Boeing 18 months ago after 32 years of building engines that were not allowed to fail. He calls me every 6 months, on average. He does not call in April. He does not call before 9 in the morning, because in Roland's world, that is uncivilized. "Kid," he said, "are you at the airport?" I told him I was. There was a long enough pause that I heard the coffee maker running in his kitchen. "Your mother's checking account has been bleeding for 4 years," Roland said. "It isn't you." I moved my coffee to the small table beside the window and sat down. "When I helped her set up online banking at Thanksgiving," Roland said, "I saw the transfers. I've been sitting on it. I wasn't going to make anyone's Christmas harder. But something feels off about this trip, and I want you to hear it from me before you get on that plane." He told me the number. 38 separate transfers. $68,000 over 4 years from my mother's checking to Marion's account. Sometimes $1,200, sometimes $2,200. Always with the memo line left blank. I did the arithmetic in my head. $17,000 a year. Not a business. not tuition. Marion doesn't have children in school. Marion's daughter, Ashley, has a salary at a Michelin restaurant in Napa that pays her enough to cover herself. I asked Roland what he thought. I think, he said, that a real estate agent in Sacramento does not spend $17,000 a year in unmarked cash unless she is trying to hide the receipts. And I think you know something you haven't been telling anyone. He was right. I did. I opened photos on my phone. I scrolled back to a date I had not looked at in 12 months, March 22, 2011. Spring break of my junior year at UC Davis. Brunch with my roommate at a place on Nob Hill that had a view over the bay. I had gone to the restroom on the 4th floor of the Fairmont because the restaurant across the street had a line. On my way back down, I saw two people I recognized cross the marble lobby. My Aunt Marion, 48 years old, in a dress I remembered her buying for Ruth's 70th birthday, and Chuck Bishop, the husband of Beverly Whitaker, my mother's best friend of 42 years. They walked into the elevator without touching, in the way that people who have practiced not touching in public know how to do. I lifted my phone. I took one picture. I never sent it to my mother. I never told anyone. I emailed the file to Roland 1 hour later with 3 words in the subject line: "Keep this safe," and no explanation. Roland never asked. He simply replied, "Filed." Then he never mentioned it again. I looked at the photograph. I looked at Marion's hand, in the corner of the frame, resting on Chuck's forearm. The corked bottle had come back to me on a spring morning at SFO, still labeled fine. I closed the app. Overhead, the boarding announcement for Cascade Airways, 1832, San Francisco to Rome, began. Business class boarding first. I picked up my cabin bag and my Ricci Sangiovese 2015 Reserva. I walked toward the gate. The gift I had given Ashley, I had chosen not to give her the number. In December of 2024, she had called me at 9 in the evening from her apartment in St. Helena. Her voice was thin. She was 30 years old, a sommelier at one of the most demanding restaurants in Napa, engaged to a man whose family owned a vineyard 6 generations deep in Tuscany. And she was crying because her mother had told her the wedding budget was $5,000, and her father had gone quiet. She said she couldn't tell Marco. She didn't want to arrive at Villa Ricci with a wedding that looked like an apology. I told her the version of the sentence I had told myself I would say. Let me handle it. Just show up beautiful. I know the estate. I know the family. I had not told her that handle it meant the 12 rooms at Villa Ricci, 3 nights, at my distribution partner rate. $185,000 of comp against a market value that would have taken Ashley's savings for a decade. I had not told her about the 8 business class tickets, $62,400, routed through my Cascadia corporate travel account under my authorization. I had not told her about the ground transportation from Rome to Montalcino for 3 days, or the welcome dinner for 68 guests at $567 a head, or the wine, every bottle at the ceremony and reception, $92,500 at retail, drawn against my distribution allowance for the current year and part of next. $391,300 in total market value. Nothing in cash from my checking account. Nothing that would leave a trace on a bank statement my mother could ever be shown. Everything on my name. Amelia Hartwell, our operations director at Cascadia, had emailed me in February of 2025 with a single warning I hadn't fully understood at the time. Chloe, this is the largest single event comp we've approved since 2019. Are you certain? The estate is asking for your confirmation before they block the villa. And one more thing. If the family ever tries to move you around this booking, the comps do not travel with them. They travel with your name. I had thanked her and confirmed. I had not asked her what she meant by move you around. Amelia is a woman who does not use words for decoration. She had watched me do favors for people who had never asked me how I was doing. She had seen the pattern in a way I hadn't yet let myself see. By that Sunday morning in April, I understood. At 6:52, an email arrived on my phone. Isabella Moretti, General Manager of Hospitality at Tenuta Ricci Estate. Isabella has been my counterpart in Italy since 2019, and her English is more formal than Signora Christina's, but her heart is the same. The subject line said simply, Signora asks, Chloe, Signora Ricci has personally chosen your welcome bouquet. She asks whether you prefer white peonies or Sangiovese blossoms. She waits for you in the courtyard Friday evening. She wishes to embrace you first before the toast. Please travel safely. I read the email twice. I read the sentence about the embrace 3 times. I have been to Tenuta Ricci 16 times in 8 years. I have watched Signora Cristina work through 3 harvests, 1 funeral, and 2 grandchildren. She has never sent me a welcome bouquet. She has never asked what flowers I prefer. She has always poured me a glass of wine on the terrazza and told me what she was worried about. And I have always told her what I was seeing in California, and we have made decisions the way farmers do, in the interval between one season and the next. An embrace at the courtyard before the toast was not something Signora would arrange for a guest. It was something she would arrange for someone she was preparing to defend. I felt the cold at the back of my neck before I could name what it was. Then I looked up. At gate B14, the departure screen was refreshing. My name blinked once on the manifest of Cascade Airways 1832, row, Chloe M., seat 4A. Business. And then, it was gone. A pop-up appeared on my phone. Cascade Airways. Booking cancelled. Please contact your travel administrator for details. My mother, 40 feet away, was laughing. Marion, 40 feet away, was holding my mother's arm and laughing. My father was showing something on his phone to the 2 family friends from Roseville, and they were all laughing. And behind them, the ground crew was loading the bags I had paid for. I opened the voice memo app on my phone. It was 6:39. I pressed record. I slipped the phone into the outer pocket of my blazer, screen facing up, timer running. Then the gate agent for Cascade Airways walked toward my end of the terminal. Her badge said, Ellen. She did not look at my family. She looked at me. Ms. Rowe, she said, I need to inform you. Your business class ticket has been canceled at the account level. I'm very sorry. Behind her, my mother turned to me with a cold smile. I already know what my mother said. The voice memo has it. Later, in the car on the way to my apartment in early May, I would play it back to make sure. I did not need the recording to remember. I have never forgotten a sentence anyone in my family has spoken to me. I have simply chosen, for most of my life, not to repeat them. She said it loud enough for the 6 travelers between us to hear. Have fun walking home, you pathetic loser. Don't ruin your cousin's wedding. My father, who has never been loud in public in 36 years of being my father, added the sentence he had apparently rehearsed on the drive down from Roseville. Take the bus. Know your fucking place. You're nothing but a burden. Marion laughed. She laughed the way she had laughed at Ashley's engagement party in Sonoma, while my 34th birthday passed unattended. Her hand tightened on my mother's arm. 2 young women waiting at the priority boarding line looked at each other and looked away. An older man in a sport coat looked at me directly, then at my parents, then back at me, and something in his face suggested he was about to say something in the direction of my parents that would not have helped. I shook my head at him. Once. Just enough. He did not speak. I did not answer my mother. I did not answer my father. I did not look at Marion. I opened my contacts, tapped the name Amelia Hartwell, Opes, and lifted the phone to my ear. Amelia picked up on the second ring. It was 6:40 in California. It was 9:40 for her, at her desk in Oakland, because she had been up since 5 reviewing our quarterly numbers, which is the kind of thing she does without being asked. Amelia. My voice was lower than the ambient terminal, which is another thing I have learned to do without meaning to. Revoke all corporate comps for the entire group, immediately. She did not ask which group. She did not ask why. Consider it done, she said. Then, without a pause, do you want to keep your own seat? Book me on the next Cascade partner cabin, San Francisco to Rome, first class. My personal card. Not corporate. You're already booked. Cascade 1912, 9:45 departure, seat 2A. I did that when I saw the family cancel your seat 6 minutes ago. I closed my eyes for a second. Not for gratitude. For the sound of another person seeing what I was living without needing me to explain it. Thank you, Amelia. She waited a beat. She said, Chloe, I am so sorry. Then she said, in the tone that always meant she was giving me a piece of information she had been holding, Isabella called me last night. Signora Ricci already knows something is going to be attempted against you. She asked me to protect you if it happens. It happened. I did not ask her how Signora knew. I already suspected. Marian had emailed the estate 3 weeks earlier to ask, in what she probably thought was a gracious tone, whether the seating chart might be reworked to reflect immediate family only. Isabella had forwarded the email to me and to Signora Cristina. Signora had marked it, read, and had not replied. That was 3 weeks ago. I had not understood at the time what she was waiting for. I hung up. I did not walk back toward the counter. I did not raise my voice. I walked to the window closest to the priority check-in desk, and I stood with my back to my mother and my aunt and my father, and I watched the ground crew load a suitcase I recognized, because I had bought it for my mother in 2019. Louis Vuitton Keepall, 45 liters. She had said at the time that she would use it for anniversaries. She had been using it for 4 years to visit my aunt in Sacramento. The clock on the terminal wall read 7:04. Ellen, the gate agent, was on the phone at the priority desk. She was speaking quietly to someone on the other end. She was nodding without smiling. Her fingers were moving on a keyboard. At 7:09, she took a breath. She stepped away from the desk. She walked toward my family. She did not stop at the friends from Roseville. She stopped in the small semicircle where my mother and my father and my aunt and the 2 friends were now beginning to look at her because they had noticed she was carrying something on her face they didn't recognize. She spoke loud enough for 40 passengers to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to inform you that there has been a major change. All your business class upgrades have been canceled at the corporate account level. Additionally, since your reservations were confirmed under corporate comp rate, those rates have also been revoked. Your options: purchase economy tickets at counter rate to fly today, or arrange other travel. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. My mother's mouth opened. No sound came out. My father turned his head. He saw me at the window. His hand slid off the corner of the counter. He did not know yet what to do with his own body. Marian said, in a voice she had probably intended to be smaller than it was, That's not possible. I'm on the manifest. Ellen looked at her screen. She read from it, without expression. You were, ma'am. The corporate account holder has revoked authorization. Marian, sharper. Who is the account holder? Ellen read what was on her screen. Rowe. Chloe M. Rowe. Distribution partner of record. Tenuta Ricci Sangiovese. My mother turned toward me. Her voice cracked in the middle. Where is Chloe? Marian turned. Marian saw me. Marian did not speak. I walked across the terminal until I was close enough for her to hear me at conversational volume. I did not raise my voice. See you in Tuscany, I said. Then I turned around and I walked to gate B22, and I boarded Cascade 1912. My family did what my family has always done when the truth becomes inconvenient. They wrote a different one. Marian posted an Instagram story at 7:22. Selfie mode. all four of them still at the priority check-in desk, my mother's hand on Marion's cheek in a pose that suggested a kind of intimacy neither of them had ever shown me. The caption was in Marion's usual voice, warm adjacent and public-facing. Off to Tuscany for Ashley's wedding. Chloe couldn't join. She chose work over family again. Send prayers for our girl. 3 emojis, a broken heart, praying hands, a little sad face. By 7:45, 62 people had watched the story. 3 of my mother's cousins reposted it. My mother's college roommate from Redlands sent a message that said, according to a screenshot Ashley later forwarded me, that Chloe had always had trouble prioritizing family, and it must be so hard for a mother. I read it. I did not respond. My mother, I noticed, had chosen the crop of the selfie so that the gate area behind them didn't include the priority check-in desk. She had cropped out the 6:38 version of the story and pasted the 7:22 version over it. My mother has always been good at cropping. I did not learn it from her. I have kept the whole frame. A minute later, my mother stepped away from the group and made a phone call. She stood in the small hallway between the terminal shops and the water fountains, where the acoustics carry farther than she thought. She dialed Beverly Whitaker, her best friend of 42 years, whom she talks to every Sunday night at 8. Beverly is the wife of Chuck Bishop. I could not hear Beverly's side. I could hear my mother's. Beverly, honey, Chloe was so difficult this morning. She just walked away. She's always been difficult, you know. A pause. My mother's back stiffened. Whatever Beverly had said had not been what my mother expected. What do you mean? That's not what you heard from Marion last week. She listened. She listened for longer than any human being on a phone call has ever listened to me in my entire life. Then she said, in a voice so brittle it was almost a laugh, "Oh, Beverly, you know Marion. Always dramatic." She hung up. She stood in the hallway for a moment with her phone in her hand, as if the phone might answer a question she had not been prepared to ask. Then she walked back to the group. Marion was still laughing about something. My mother did not laugh back. I saw her look at Marion for the first time all morning as if Marion were someone she did not entirely recognize. It was 7:53. I had been sitting in the Cascade Elite Lounge with a fresh cup of coffee. I did not intervene. My cousin Ashley, the bride, arrived at Gate B14 at 8:01. She had flown down from Napa on an early flight and taken the air train to the international terminal, and she was wearing a cream cardigan I recognized from an Instagram story she had posted at Christmas. She hugged Marion first, then my mother, then my father. Then she looked around. "Where's Chloe?" Marion smiled. She smiled the way she has smiled at me for 15 years, in the specific configuration that means she has already decided what she is going to say. "Sweetheart, Chloe had a work emergency. She won't make the wedding. She'll send a gift." Ashley blinked. I know Ashley's face. I have watched Ashley's face across dinner tables and vineyards and airport gates for 30 years. Her mother's version of a story does not survive contact with Ashley's face when Ashley has already been told a different version. Ashley took her phone out of her pocket. "But Chloe said she'd be there Friday. She sent me a text at 5 this morning." Marion's smile did not move. "You know Chloe. She overpromises." Ashley did not answer her mother. She stepped a little bit away from the group. She lifted her phone. She wrote a message to me. I received it in the lounge at 8:04. It said, "Are you okay? Mom said you're not coming." I typed back with one hand. My other hand was holding my coffee, and I was watching the Cascade 1912 pre-boarding for first class begin at Gate B22 without me having gotten up yet. I wrote, "I'll be there Friday. Trust me." Ashley did not reply immediately. I imagined her reading it while her mother stood 4 feet away. Then I saw the little bubble that meant she was typing. And then it stopped. And then it started. And then it stopped again. And then she wrote back a single line. Okay. That was the last text I would receive from her before we saw each other at Villa Ricci. I closed the messages. I picked up my cabin bag. I walked to gate B22. I boarded Cascade 1912 at 8:19. The flight was 11 hours and 20 minutes, and I did not sleep for the first two. I sat by the window in seat 2A of a first-class cabin I had not been in before, and I let the wine steward bring me a glass of champagne I did not drink. I watched the coast of California turn into blue. The man in seat 2B was Italian, roughly 50, in an unstructured navy jacket. He introduced himself as Enrico. He was going home to Milan by way of Rome after an editorial visit to Napa. He was, he told me, the editor-in-chief of Vino Italia magazine. I gave him my name because there was no reason to hide it. I gave him the name of my distributor because it was on my business card. He put down his glass. Cascadia Beverage Group. Row. You are the American distributor for Signora Ricci. I nodded. He said, without any drama. I interviewed Signora last December in Montalcino. We were sitting on the terrazza. She had opened a 2015 Reserva. She said, "My American partner is the daughter my son should have married before he met his Ashley." I laughed. She did not laugh. She meant it. "Are you that partner?" I looked at my hands. I said, "I am that partner." Enrico did not say anything for a moment. He looked out the window at the ocean. Then he took a business card out of his jacket and set it on my tray. "My magazine goes to press on Friday. If, before then, you decide there is something you would like to add, about American distribution, or about Signora, or about your career, I would like to hear it. Not for a story, for my own understanding." I put the card in my wallet. I did not commit. He turned back to his window. He did not press. I closed my eyes and did not sleep. We landed at Fiumicino at 6:05 on Monday morning, Rome time. The terminal was quiet. Passport control was fast. I collected my bag, and I stepped out through the sliding doors into the crisp early April air, and Salvatore was standing where he had stood the 16 previous times he had picked me up. He was 61 years old. He had been driving for Tenuta Ricci for 31 years, since before Marco was born. He wore the same charcoal gray suit and the same silver watch, and the same expression of unshakable calm. He held up a small hand-lettered wooden sign that said, in careful English, Row/Ricci Estate. He did not ask me how the flight had gone. He said, "Signora Ricci asked me to bring you to Villa first. She waits in the courtyard. Even now." I looked at my watch. It read 6:15. "It is 6 in the morning here," I said. Salvatore opened the car door. He said, "She waits. She said she would." The drive from Fiumicino to Montalcino is 3 hours and 13 minutes, if you are Salvatore. If you are anyone else, it is 3 hours and 30. He does not speed. He knows the road. He takes the Via Cassia after Orvieto, so the light falls on the vineyards in the way he prefers. I watched the countryside for the first hour. Then I watched Salvatore's hands on the wheel, because they were steadier than mine. On the way, I received a text from Ashley. "Stand by in Rome. Mom is being weird. Marion won't stop looking at her phone." I did not answer. I watched the road. We arrived at Villa Ricci at 9:18. The morning fog was still on the low fields. The courtyard was empty except for one person. Signora Cristina Ricci stood at the fountain in a gray cashmere coat and a black scarf, holding a cup of coffee. She was 68 years old and taller than I had remembered. She saw me get out of the car. She set her cup down on the edge of the fountain. She walked to me. She opened her arms. She did not say anything for 4 seconds. Then she said, in her particular English with its Tuscan cadence, "They tried something at the airport, no?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I know. Isabella called me at midnight. My daughter. You are safe here." She led me into the small dining room where I had eaten breakfast with her 3 harvests in a row. On the polished walnut table was a place card printed in gold ink on cream stock. It read, Chloe Rowe, silent sponsor, distribution partner of record. Signora watched me read it. She said, I ordered them yesterday, before I knew they were trying to remove you. On Friday, 68 people will read it. I understood then, for the first time all morning, that I was not going to have to fight alone. Between Monday morning and Friday afternoon, I did the things I would have done anyway. I walked the estate with Marco. I confirmed the wine cellar list with the sommelier who had trained under Isabella. I helped Signora choose the seating order for the outdoor ceremony. I called Amelia twice and asked her to hold the corporate travel account cancellations open, and she said, Chloe, I'm not reversing anything until you give me a written instruction, and I hope you don't. I did not. My family arrived at Villa Ricci on Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., 6 hours later than scheduled, in a leased minivan from a shop in Rome that had charged them €1,400 because they had needed the vehicle at short notice. They had spent Monday night in an airport hotel because they had not been able to buy same-day economy tickets for 8 people at reasonable prices. They had spent Tuesday and Wednesday in a 2-star pension off the Via Nazionale, waiting for a Wednesday night flight to Florence that had cost them €900 apiece. They were tired. Their outfits were wrinkled. Their coffee had gone cold in the van. Marian walked into the courtyard first. She was scanning for Signora. She was not scanning for me. She turned to look for the driver, and when she turned back, she saw me standing at Signora's right shoulder in the shade of the fountain, and she stopped. I did not smile. I did not frown. Signora stepped forward. She greeted my mother and my father with the formal cadence of a woman receiving guests in her own home. She turned to Marian. She held her hand out for Marian to take. Marian had to take it. Signora said, in her particular English, Welcome. In Tuscany, we say the vineyard remembers who came and who tried not to come. Marian's hand withdrew a beat too quickly. Ashley ran across the courtyard the moment she saw me. She was wearing a linen dress the color of pale wheat. She hit me at full speed and put her face into my shoulder and said, into my collarbone, Mom said you weren't coming. Mom said you weren't coming. I didn't believe her, but I couldn't ask you again. I held her. I did not say Marian had lied. I did not need to. Marian, behind us, adjusted her scarf. At 7 that evening, 68 of us sat down at the long walnut table in the ballroom of Villa Ricci. The table ran 20 meters, beeswax candles between white peonies, wine glasses turned right side up in a specific order I recognized from the summer of 2022. Signora was at the head of the table. I was on her right. On my other side, still smelling faintly of the Portland flight he had taken that morning without telling anyone, was my uncle Roland Kendrick, who had said to me, when he sat down, I flew in from Portland. I had a feeling I needed to be here. He had brought his own iPad. He did not explain why. Marian, my mother, and my father were seated 12 chairs down. On every place card was a name and a title. Mine was still there, the one Signora had shown me on Monday morning, in gold on cream. Chloe Rowe, silent sponsor, distribution partner of record. Marian walked past my place card on her way to her seat. She read it. Her mouth tightened. She did not sit down immediately. Signora tapped her wine glass with the edge of her spoon. 68 people fell quiet. She spoke in English, because most of the guests were Americans, and because she wanted every American in the room to hear every word. She spoke for 6 minutes. I have counted, because I have listened to the audio again once, at Amelia's request, when we were revising the contract in May. I will not repeat the whole speech. I will repeat only the parts that mattered. She said, It was Chloe Rowe who brought Ashley to us in the harvest of 2022. She said, It was Chloe Rowe who told me about my son's shyness. She said, Signora, he will not ask, so I brought her. She said. It was Chloe Rowe who arranged this wedding at our estate. Quietly, without asking for credit. She said. It was Chloe Rowe who chose the peonies at every table tonight. She said. It was Chloe Rowe who made sure her family flew business class, in seats she paid for through her partnership with us. She said. And so, on behalf of my son, and on behalf of the vineyard 6 generations of Ricci have kept alive. Grazie, Chloe. Grazie. 68 glasses lifted. At the far end of the table, my mother had gone the color of paper. Marion had gone the color of nothing. My father was looking at the tablecloth. 2 of the American guests, friends of my parents from Roseville, were staring at Marion because they were not sure they had understood what had just been said. Marion stood up. She held her glass. Her voice was polite in the way that people who have spent a lifetime being polite at church council meetings can be polite when they are terrified. She said, Signora, we are so grateful. Chloe has always been very generous. But of course our family also contributed to this beautiful. Signora cut her off. She did not raise her voice. She simply spoke over her the way an experienced host speaks over a guest who has misread the room. Sigh, Signora Kendrick, on my table credit goes where the money went, and the money in this room came from your niece. This is not a place for rewriting. She lifted a cream envelope from beside her plate. She passed it hand to hand along the table. 14 people held it before it reached Marion. Marion opened it. Inside was a printed placement card. The same as mine. Chloe Rowe, silent sponsor, distribution partner of record. Marion placed it on the tablecloth. She sat down. She did not stand again. My mother whispered to my father. She said, What is she talking about? What did Chloe pay for? My father did not answer her. My father was remembering something, and his memory had begun the slow work of turning around to look at what it had refused to see for years. Marco Ricci stood up. He is 34, and he does not enjoy speaking in front of crowds, but that night he spoke without notes. He said, Ashley, I have to tell you something before we marry tomorrow. In 2022, you did not just meet me. Chloe brought you to meet me. She told my mother I needed to marry someone who understood the vineyard. She chose you for me before I chose you, and you chose me, and that is why we are here. So tonight I toast Chloe, because without her, there is no us. Ashley stood up. She walked the 20 meters around the table. She sat down in the empty chair on the other side of me, which is where Signora had placed her that morning without telling either of us. She took my hand. She did not let go. Roland Kendrick set his water glass down. He stood up. He looked at Marion. He said, I've been quiet a long time. I don't think I can be quiet through this. Roland is not a man who orates. He is a man who fixes engines. He had brought a small iPad with him from Portland, and he had asked Isabella that morning whether the ballroom had a television, and Isabella had said yes. And now the flat screen at the back of the ballroom lit up because Roland had connected his iPad to it. He said in his engineer's voice, My niece Chloe emailed me a photograph on March 22, 2011. She was 21 years old. She asked me to keep it safe and never share it unless she asked. She never asked, but last week I flew down from Portland to Sacramento, and I sat in my sister Cheryl's kitchen, and I saw something in Marion's face that told me the day Chloe warned me about had come. So I flew here. The photograph filled the screen. Marion, 48 years old, in the dress she had worn to my grandmother's 70th birthday party. Chuck Bishop beside her, the husband of Beverly Whitaker, my mother's best friend of 42 years. Fairmont San Francisco lobby. Time stamped, in the corner of the frame, in metadata Roland had made visible. March 22, 2011, 2:47 p.m. Roland said, Chloe was 21, on spring break, having brunch across the street. She saw them. She took the picture. She emailed it to me an hour later. 3 words in the subject line. Keep this safe. Today, I think she would forgive me for showing it. The ballroom was silent for a length of time I could not measure. My mother put her hand to her mouth. She did not scream. She made a small sound, like the breath leaving a room. Marian did not move. My father closed his eyes. Roland said, "There is one more thing." He opened his banking app. My mother had shared read-only access with him at Thanksgiving, when he had helped her recover her password. He had never used it. He used it now. He pulled up her checking account statement and mirrored it to the screen. 38 transfers to Marian Kendrick over 4 years. $68,000. He said, "Cheryl, you told me it was for Ashley's grad school. Ashley isn't in grad school. Ashley is in Napa. Marian has been spending your money for 4 years on someone whose photograph is now on that wall." My mother put her palm flat on the table as though she needed to feel wood beneath her hand to know she was still sitting. My father stood up. He walked the length of the 20-meter table. He carried his wine glass with him. He did not spill it. He stopped in front of Marian. He set his wine glass down on the tablecloth in front of her plate. He said 4 words. "Marian, you will leave." Marian opened her mouth. She did not speak. Signora Cristina lifted her own tablet, the one Isabella had prepared with an open FaceTime channel to Sacramento. On the screen, when it came up, was Beverly Whitaker. She was in her kitchen. It was late morning in California, and there was a coffee mug in her hand, and she was wearing a cardigan I had seen her wear at my mother's birthday last year. Beverly did not smile. She did not need to. She said, "Cheryl, you were my best friend for 42 years. Marian, you were the woman I trusted around my husband. Roland showed me this photograph last Tuesday. I've been waiting 15 years for it to exist. Chuck comes home from golf at 4 this afternoon. I'll handle the rest." She looked at me. "Chloe, I'm sorry it took you 15 years and a wedding in Tuscany, but I understand why it did." She ended the call. The screen went dark. Marian stood up. She left the ballroom by the side door. She did not take her purse. Signora had one of the staff carry it out to her later that evening. Marian did not come to the wedding. She flew home on Sunday, in economy, at her own expense. My mother did not follow her. My mother put her head down on the table for a long moment. Then she lifted it. She looked at me. She said, "Chloe, I don't know what to say." I said, "You don't have to say anything tonight." My father sat down beside her. He put his hand on her shoulder for the first time since I could remember. He said to her, quietly, "We stay. Ashley marries tomorrow. Then we go home." Signora stood up. She lifted her glass. She said, "The vineyard remembers. Grazie, Chloe. Grazie, Ashley. Grazie, Marco. Buon appetito." 67 glasses lifted. 67 people ate dinner. At my end of the table, Ashley did not let go of my hand. I did not eat much. I drank 1 glass of the 2015 Reserva that Signora had opened for the toast. It was better than I remembered. Reserva always is, once you have had to wait for it. Ashley married Marco the next afternoon in the vineyard I had been introducing to American tables since 2018. She wore a dress her mother had not helped her choose. My mother and father sat in the second row. Marian's chair was empty. Roland sat in the first row, and Ashley thanked him from the altar for arriving in time. After the reception, Ashley pulled me aside on the terrazza. The sun was going down over Montalcino. She was still holding her bouquet. She said, "Chloe, can you loan me $8,000 for the honeymoon? Mom is gone. She was going to help." I looked at Ashley. I looked at her ring, which Marco had chosen without help. I looked at the wine list she had designed for the reception, which was better than most wine lists I have reviewed in 8 years of doing this professionally. I said, "No." Ashley's mouth opened. You are a sommelier at a Michelin restaurant. You have credit. You have savings. You have a husband who has a job at his family's estate. This is the last thing I do for someone else's honeymoon. It has to be yours. Ashley cried. Not the way she had cried in December of 2024. This was a smaller, cleaner cry. She nodded. She said, "I'll pay you back for the wedding someday." No, the wedding was a gift. But this trip, this was the last one where I was invisible. She hugged me. She said, "I love you. I love you too. Have a good honeymoon." She went to find Marco. I watched them walk down the row of cypress trees toward the villa. That evening, after most of the guests had left, my father came out onto the terrazza. He held a glass of wine he had not drunk. He stood at the edge of the stone wall. He did not sit down. He said, "Kid, I don't know what to say." I said, "Take the bus." I meant it. I don't know why. Maybe because I felt small next to you. I'm sorry. It's not enough. I know. I looked at him. He was 67. He had spent 38 years at the post office. He had never once told me he was proud of me. I